Today, a federal trial is set to begin for a Milwaukee judge accused of helping an illegal migrant evade ICE. Judge Hannah Dugan allegedly tried to distract agents by falsely telling officers they needed a judicial warrant as they were trying to arrest a Mexican national who was in this country illegally. She could face up to 6 years in prison if convicted.
Are trying to give the jury a lay of the land for where all of this happened, showing the jury pictures, videos, layouts of the floor plan for the courthouse of where Milwaukee County Circuit Judge Hannah Dugan's courtroom is. This is some of the surveillance video that prosecutors showed in court today. You can see Dugan there confronting the ICE agents in the hallway outside her courtroom where they were waiting to arrest an illegal immigrant appearing in her court back in April. This is the same hallway where the illegal immigrant and his attorney walked down after being directed by Dugan out a back door that's not used by the public. Prosecutors argue that back door is not the one Dugan meant for them to take. In court filings and in audio recordings the jury just listened to, prosecutors argue Dugan discussed having the illegal immigrant to go through the back jury door and down the stairs, stating she would take the heat for her actions. Prosecutors say the stairs Dugan referenced is for a stairwell that's behind a door right before the exit to the main hallway that they ultimately took. And that stairwell would have allowed the illegal immigrant to leave without the agents ever spotting him. This is a key part of the prosecution's case, that Dugan was trying to help the illegal immigrant evade arrest. Her defense argues if she was actually set on doing that, though, she would have walked them to the stairwell door instead of just pointing down her back hallway where they just leisurely walked out. Dugan is facing 2 charges: obstructing a federal agency, which is a felony, and concealing an individual to prevent an arrest, which is a misdemeanor. The trial is expected to run for about a week, and Judge Dugan is facing up to 6 years in prison if she's convicted. Sandra?
All right, we will be watching.
All right, so we got to talk about what's going on in Milwaukee right now, where a federal trial has begun in Milwaukee for a Milwaukee County Circuit Judge accused of helping an illegal immigrant evade federal authorities, guys. And so get this. What's being alleged right now is that when immigration agents, they came down to the courthouse to arrest a man outside of the courtroom, the judge in that case diverted the agents and then directed the man out through a non-public exit to help him avoid arrest, according to prosecutors. And she even told the court reporter she'd take the heat. Now, the defense says that she was following courthouse policy and had no intent to obstruct, but let's kind of understand why this story matters beyond Milwaukee. This isn't happening in a vacuum. Across major cities, Chicago, most recently, you've had a steady push to limit how ICE agents can do their job in these Democrat states. Just recently, the governor in Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, signed a new state law which includes provisions aimed at protecting illegal immigrants from civil immigration arrests in and around courthouses. So now zoom out, because you got to start to ask the bigger question. What happens when local systems start acting like a shield? Will they be held accountable? And, well, at least in this case, the feds are making something clear. They will at least prosecute officials they believe are interfering.
Judge Hannah Dugan now finds herself on the opposite side of the bench in a federal courtroom that will determine if she's guilty or not guilty. Dugan has said she did nothing wrong when ICE and federal agents, seen in this Milwaukee courthouse video, showed up in a public hallway to arrest Eduardo Flores Ruiz in April for being in the country illegally. Dugan is seen talking with federal agents, and according to prosecutors, she was, quote, falsely telling them that they needed a judicial warrant to make an arrest. The federal indictment alleges she directed Flores Ruiz and his lawyer to exit through a non-public jury door. They didn't get far. The Mexican immigrant was arrested after a brief chase outside the courthouse, also caught on camera. Days later, Dugan was arrested, with FBI Director Kash Patel posting on X this photo of her leaving the courthouse in handcuffs. That post has 38 million views. Attorney General Pam Bondi posting, quote, "No one is above the law." Dugan is charged with concealing a person and obstruction.
We're ready for trial.
That day has now come, but not before Dugan's defense team tried to have the case dismissed, claiming judicial immunity. During the summer, 130 retired state and federal judges signed a letter supporting the dismissal. Judge Lynn Edelman ultimately denied the motion. The case has attracted protests on the steps of the federal courthouse in Milwaukee with anti-ICE signs from supporters. Dugan has been suspended from her $175,000 a year judicial duties pending the outcome of the trial by 12 jurors.
What we're doing is we're trying to find a way to pick a jury in a fair way so that the judge can have a fair trial and the government can have a fair trial too.
Judge Edelman says this case could take up to 5 days before it goes to the jury. In Milwaukee, Charles Benson, TMJ4 News.
And again, opening statements for the trial begin this morning. Be sure to stay with TMJ4 on air and online as we follow the latest developments.
All right, so let's slow this down and be very clear about what this case is about and what it isn't, in my opinion. This is not about a judge disagreeing with immigration policy. It's not even about activism or protest. This is about a judge obstructing federal law enforcement from doing their job, plain and simple. So you heard what was said, according to the federal prosecutors, with the Milwaukee County Judge, Hannah Dugan. She knew the ICE agents were waiting outside of her courthouse to arrest the illegal migrant. And instead of allowing that arrest to happen, the prosecutors are saying that she diverted the agent's attention and then directed the defendant through a non-public exit, a route that wasn't usually taken by the public, to avoid being taken into custody. And that's the key point. The allegation isn't passive, it's not accidental, it's active intervention. And so now, yeah, that man was later captured outside, as you saw in the video. He was captured outside the courthouse and deported, but that doesn't erase the alleged conduct where she could face up to 6 years in prison. And that's why this case is so explosive. Because here's the thing. Because if a sitting judge can step in and interfere with federal agents inside her own courtroom, then the question has to become, because we see it happening in places like Chicago, for instance, where the local and state leaders have spent years building layers of protection around illegal immigrants, sanctuary policies, limits on cooperation with ICE, and legal frameworks designed to slow or block federal action. And so judges didn't write those laws, but many of them now operate within a system that treats non-cooperation as the default. So the question becomes, who is enforcing the law and who decides when it applies? And we see how when a judge in Wisconsin is accused of helping someone evade arrest, the immediate reaction from some quarters is to frame it as compassion. Take a look at what happens outside the courthouse. You got people rallying in support. I want you guys to look at this. Rallying in support of this judge, not arguing the facts of the case, not disputing what she allegedly did, but defending the choice to interfere with law enforcement in the first place. Take a listen.
Judge Dugan is on trial today for daring to defend the most basic right of immigrants, the right to due process. What we are witnessing today is an effort by this administration to intimidate other judges. This is selective justice, and we will not stand for it. We know that the federal power is already being used to intimidate others, not just judges, but public servants, community leaders who are not bowing to the abuse of this administration. This is not about public safety. This is not about the rule of law. And yet, we know that no matter how much they try to threaten us, Wisconsin and across this country is not remaining silent. We are resisting and we are speaking out.
One argument you always hear from people who defend illegal immigrants is always the due process argument. And they'll try to make it sound reasonable until you actually understand what due process actually means when it comes to immigration law. And so, yeah, everyone in the United States is entitled to basic due process, but due process doesn't mean immunity from enforcement. It does not mean the right to remain in this country indefinitely, and it does not mean that the judge gets to interfere with federal law. And the part that activists conveniently leave out is that immigration law already provides a process. ICE already operates under legal authority. Federal courts already exist for these cases. And the man in this case, before he was deported, pled guilty to illegally re-entering the United States. And so we're talking about a case where he was already removed and he came back illegally again. And you see people on a courthouse step defending him, defending the judge, defending what that stands for. And so the real issue here isn't whether the individual had rights. The issue is whether a judge had the right to override federal law. And that's where the rhetoric on the courthouse steps completely collapses. Now, let's jump into this clip because Senator John Kelly of Louisiana, he doesn't mince words. You already know. He can be quite the speaker. And he's been very clear about what ICE operations are, why they matter, and why enforcing the law isn't optional, no matter how unpopular it is in certain political circles. Take a listen.
Well, we understand what that means. And speaking of home, down in Louisiana, you guys have Operation Catahoula Crunch. It's been very effective.
Yeah.
This is where ICE is targeting gang members, rapists, human smugglers. But, Senator, there are still those people out there, some of them elected officials, who aren't just protesting this, but suggesting that people should, go after ICE agents and target them. What is your response to all of this, and what is your message to people who would do such a thing like that?
None of this is complicated. I don't know. I don't understand the controversy. Look, legal immigration is legal. We admit 1 million people into our country every year, more than any other country, legally. Legal immigration is legal. Illegal immigration is illegal. And all President Trump is doing is enforcing federal law. President Biden, he let between 8 million and 12 million people into our country. We don't have the slightest idea who they are. Some of them are probably good. I mean, I know, not just probably, they're good people. Some of them are criminals. All of them are here illegally. You've got to follow the law, duh. And so what's controversial about a president of the United States, any president, enforcing federal law? I don't get it.
And that's the part people like that judge and activists in cities like New York, Chicago don't seem to understand. Listen, I don't argue that some of these individuals aren't good people at heart. I don't argue that at all. But good intentions do not override the law. The law is very clear. If you are in this country illegally, you can be detained and deported for that fact alone. Due process doesn't mean immunity. It doesn't mean a free pass. It means the government follows the legal process, and that process can still end in removal. What you're seeing from some judges and local officials isn't compassion. It's lawlessness dressed up as morality. And here's the real issue. If Democrats or anyone believes the law is unfair, then there is a lawful path to address that. You go to Congress, you change the statute, you debate it openly and vote on it. What you don't get to do is ignore the law, obstruct enforcement, or decide unilaterally that rules don't apply because enforcing them feels mean or politically inconvenient. That's not how this system works. When judges pick and choose which laws they'll respect, they stop being neutral arbitrators and become activists in robes. And once that line is crossed, the justice system itself can start to break down. And in this country governed by laws, not feelings, no one gets to decide which ones they'll follow and which ones they won't. But now I want to hear from you. Drop your comments down below. As always, the best way to show your support is by smashing that thumbs up, subscribing, and sharing this video with more people so they can see what's really going on. Until next time.